They think the only way they can catch me is to stop me from speaking. They want to take away my voice. And a judge gave a gag order today. Did you hear that on speech? Which I believe is totally unconstitutional, what she did. A judge gave a gag order. A judge doesn't like me too much. Her whole life is not liking me. But she gave a gag order. You know what a gag order is? You can't speak badly about your opponent. But what they don't understand is that I am willing to go to jail if that's what it takes for our country to win and become a democracy again.
I could not agree more. Going to jail and getting the hell out of the way and getting rid of the guy who was trying to threaten democracy might make the country back to a democracy that is trying to still continue to be. I agree, former President Trump, as he's talking about the gag order that was put on him by the judge in one of the 2,437 cases that he's fighting against now. By the way, he said this gag order on speech. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? I guess you'd have to imagine it because that's not actually what was happening here. The judge was overseeing this federal election interference case, though. They put a partial gag order on Trump, forbidding him from making statements about potential witnesses or disparaging comments about the prosecutors, because that's a gag order on speech, apparently, when you're running for president again. Here's some details in case you want the truth behind after the BS lies that were just told. U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan said that she would not impose restrictions on Trump's statements about Washington, D.C. and its residents, nor on statements criticizing the government or the Justice Department generally. But she imposed a restriction on all parties, including Trump, that banned them from making or reposting any statements publicly targeting the special counsel or his staff, as well as court staff members or personnel. Weird. There's more, though. Is what she said, in case you thought this was just somebody writing about it. Mr. Trump may still vigorously seek public support as a presidential candidate, debate policies and people related to that candidacy, criticize the current administration, and assert his belief that this prosecution is politically motivated. She said he can assert his belief that this prosecution is politically motivated. He can, but those critical First Amendment freedoms do not allow him to launch a pretrial smear campaign against participating government staff, their families, and foreseeable witnesses. That's what he can't do. That's what he's telling this crowd of folks. Can you believe they're not gonna let me smear people? They're not gonna let me smear court workers. They're not gonna let me smear prosecutors. They're not gonna let me dox people's families so you can show up at their houses and threaten their lives. Can you believe it? What a world. There's more. This is what else Chutkan continued to say. Mr. Trump can certainly claim he's being unfairly prosecuted, but I cannot imagine any other criminal case in which a defendant is permitted to call the prosecutor deranged or a thug, and I will not permit it here simply because the defendant is running a political campaign. His presidential candidacy does not give him carte blanche to vilify and implicitly encourage violence against public servants who are simply doing their job. One more part. She went on to say that Trump could make statements about one of his 2024 Republican rivals, former President Mike Pence, but could not speak about his role in the case. Chutkan said Trump did not have a right to launch a smear campaign against witnesses, prosecutors, and court staff members. Well, before you jump in here, because I know you have a lot to say, David, let's go to one more video here. He was speaking at a different event, and this one really, I wanted to make sure we had this, and I'm glad you guys had it, because he was talking about how he's gonna appeal it. But think about how he builds to that point of how he's gonna appeal it here.
I'll be the only politician in history that runs with a gag order where I'm not allowed to criticize people. Can you imagine this? Do you believe this? I'm not allowed to criticize people, so we'll see. We'll appeal it, and we'll see, but it's so unconstitutional. The good thing is we have so much support, it's incredible. And it just makes it even more so. Look, I'm the only guy that ever got indicted. I got indicted more than Alphonse Capone. Did anyone ever hear of Al Capone? If you looked at him the wrong way, he was seriously tough, right? Scarface, you know, they call him Scarface, had a little scar in there.
This is a presidential candidate for one of the major parties in the United States of America. This is a former president, David, and it is Al Capone comparisons. I've been indicted more times than Al effing Capone. Can you believe it? He had a little scar on his face. Maybe it's a small accident. What the hell is he talking about? And number two, that is not the flex that you think it is. So if, say, someone else rolls up and runs for president, maybe a black person, maybe a Latino, anybody walk up and say, yeah, you know, I've been indicted more times than any other presidential candidate in American history ever because of all of the evidence that continues to flow out against me. Vote for me.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things jump out there. First of all, I noticed Donald Trump slurring a little bit there, and I wonder if it was maybe his denture or teeth or something is off, or maybe he's
Seen that.
just cognitively there's something wrong there. But I think the judge's ruling here is actually very fair. The judge actually. I mean, it's a little bit tighter. The first gag order that Trump got was in his financial fraud trial in New York, in which Donald Trump retweeted a picture of the judge's clerk and said she was Chuck Schumer's girlfriend because there was a photo of the judge's clerk with Schumer or whatever. And so that judge says, no, you're not going to be able to do that anymore. You can't say any comments about me. You can't say any comments about court staff. But you can still complain about the attorney general and prosecutors. Here, the judge in Washington is a little tighter in terms of saying, well, you can criticize Jack Smith, the special counsel, but you can't criticize him specifically in terms of calling him a thug, and you can't really sort of go after the evidence per se. I still think there's some wiggle room for Donald Trump, clearly a lot more wiggle room that he has than he's signaling to his audience. If you listen to Donald Trump and think, oh my God, he can't say anything. No, he can say a lot. It's just not too much to ask somebody not to specifically target court staff or the judge or witnesses or the prosecutors personally. If Donald Trump wants to say, hey, I think if this is the best the Department of Justice can do, we're in even more trouble than we know, he's fine to say that. Mm-hmm. But when you start to target people personally, I don't think it's a lot to ask.
It's the bare minimum. And a matter of fact, you shouldn't have to say this to someone who obviously has been on all kinds of legal proceedings and has a lot more coming. So the only thing now is just he's politicking. He's out there saying, can you believe what they're doing to me? Everything that is surrounding his entire political career and probably his business career too is based off of lying to people who are supporting him into thinking that what's happening isn't actually happening and that it's some unfairness. He sounds like a fifth grader. Can you believe it? What they're doing to me? I have an idea. Do things right, and you won't have to go through these problems. I remember this party that he's the head of likes to talk about personal responsibility, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, doing things the right way. Hey, if you don't like the time, maybe don't do the crime. I keep hearing these things, but for some reason it doesn't apply to this guy.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.